Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I'm happy to be joined with Vivian Tylinska from Victory Over the Sun. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing real good. Thank you. Thank you for having me on here.
Yeah. Well, you have a new record, Dancing Monster to My Soft Song. It's been out for about a month now.
Just about a month. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty wild.
So what has it been like to kind of have that out of your hand and kind of just let it be responded to by the inner sphere and have that kind of received by people?
Oh, you froze for a second. It feels very good. To release an album. There's no better feeling uh than to, you know, have this piece of work that you're kind of working on for several years
Yeah.
and have it like be done and sort of be sitting on it. Uh, it's tremendously anxiety inducing for me. I think to have a finished record and to not release it. I think the couple weeks leading up to putting out the record, I just wanted to drop it early because I couldn't stand not it not being out there. But like the longer I felt like the longer I might sit with it, the more I would think like, oh, I wish I had changed X, Y, and Z. Maybe I should change such and such, but you can't. You have to just say it's done. You have to put it out. Um, so it was really such a relief. Um, I did not, I didn't really know what to expect in terms of like how the album would be received
Hmm.
because the last one was very dissonant.
Yes.
I think it was, in many ways different. It was microtonal and this one wasn't. I think a lot of people have said that this one is a lot more accessible. I think I agree. I wanted it to feel a lot poppier and brighter. And I was a little bit worried that people would have the expectation of like, oh, this is like the ultra super maximally dissonant, like, and they went like the
Hmm.
adding in little pop hooks and stuff. But I think there's enough dissonant stuff in there to keep people satisfied. And I think people liked it, and I'm really happy.
Yeah, and that's kind of the next thing I was gonna ask because it's been about 2 years since that last LP, Nowhere, and gonna see how you felt that this one was an evolution in your own terms. You kind of touched on it. For me, when I hear this, like heard between the two, I find this new one to be a bit more theatrical. A bit. There's like these like bigger
I'm so
moments.
glad. I'm so glad you say theatrical because I feel like I've recently been really connecting with my past theater kid self.
Okay,
I think like musicals and show tunes were actually like a really integral part of my like musical experience growing up.
sure.
And I think this kind of like bombast, like I really wanted it. I think, you know, metal is capable of like carrying this incredible energy, but I think that's just like one aspect of the kind of music that I'm interested. I think it's what I have the most experience sort of making, even though it's not maybe the music that I listen to the most.
Sure.
Um, so I'm really glad that I think it is quite theatrical. Um, yeah, I think I mean Nowhere itself was kind of a departure from my sort of vision for what Victory of the Sun was supposed to be. It was originally intended as kind of like a standalone.
Uh-huh.
I had this idea to just sort of um, make something that's more like in a specific genre, to do like sludge, kind of like sort of what like Celeste or like hissing or something,
Yeah.
like black sludge doom. And to do that with like the microtonal tuning that I was using 17 EDO to just kind of showcase like the possibilities of it. But as I was writing, it became more and more, it just became bigger and bigger. And it turned, I was like, okay, this is in what maybe my original plans were for the project. Not that I have a huge overarching idea for the sound, but I think this album is more in line with like what I was doing before with the two albums that came before Nowhere.
Yeah. And apologies to everyone viewing at home when we get this out. I've noticed some freezing. I hope maybe that's not in the actual recording. If it is, I'll try my best to kind of edit that, but that is something that's kind of happening right now, just kind of technical difficulties. But yes. On your Metal Archives page and like in other spaces, I've seen your music kind of described and discussed as like avant-garde kind of experimental black metal, and do you accept that? Does that make sense? I feel like maybe that's kind of a limiting term for you. How would you sell your music?
I mean, I think I would call it avant-garde metal in that it's, it draws influence from a lot of bands that are generally called avant-garde metal, like
Yeah.
KO Dot and Liturgy. I think a few pages have listed my music. I have said that I self-describe as transcendental black metal,
Yeah.
which is Liturgy's thing, which is not true. I don't describe my music as I love Liturgy. Liturgy is maybe my favorite band. But that comes from a joke I made when I released my first album. Because I tweeted at Ravenna, I was like, hey, I made transcendental black metal. Get it? Because I'm transgender. This is like before she had come out as trans, but I was like, hey, look at me, I'm making a joke. And then I think someone like that kind of stuck. But I would not describe it as transcendental black metal because that's like a specific philosophy that's unique to her. Like only she's doing that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Because I was actually going to ask you about that because you do list Liturgy as a major inspiration for your work. What is so impactful about her music for you?
I mean, just like metal as this like vessel for tremendous energy. I think she's talked in the past about metal, as a genre, to her being more like a substance than like a form in and of itself. Like the sound is like a substance that can be used to create these like large, like sonic like constructions. I think we have talked a lot about music in the past, and we have a lot of like music in common. We both listen to a lot of like contemporary classical music. So that's like a really big influence on both of us. A lot of screamo influence as well. I think a lot of the same stuff, a lot of math rock, a lot of noise rock. So like a lot of what went into Liturgy and her music, I think is all stuff that I really like. And I think the way that I try to manifest those, or the way that I try to sort of synthesize those like sources, those inspirations are a little bit different from how she does it. But just like metal as this like this beautiful, powerful, intense, energetic thing is something that has drawn me to it since like 2012, I think. Yeah, I love Liturgy.
Yeah, I remember, and God, it's been over 10 years ago, but I remember when Estetica came out. It really blew me away. But I also remember in some hands, people thought it was amazing, but there was a lot of negative reaction to it. Like, it was very split, and I think people just weren't ready for it. But like looking back, like over this decade, I think it's been a very influential and impactful thing. Like it really paved the way for a lot of people to kind of play with black metal in certain ways.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think part of it was for a split second, it kind of seemed like black metal, which was this very sort of niche genre. And one that I don't claim to know very much about, though my music is, black metal in that it's got blast beats, tremolo picking. I'm not into black metal. I have an extremely surface knowledge of black metal in general. I
Okay.
mostly like of what I listen to, it's mostly bands that are, a couple levels removed from what people would call just
Yeah.
true black metal. But that you get this like very niche sort of insular genre all of a sudden becoming mainstream, like being on Pitchfork and stuff.
Yeah.
And so a bunch of dudes were like, no, this is like our little thing. Or like, no, you can't, you can't do this differently. This isn't true black metal. And I don't think, I don't think that the intention was to say that like this band is true black metal.
Hmm.
Um, I try and be very clear. I want to say like Victory of the Sun isn't, it's definitely not true black metal. It doesn't come from that scene. It's black metal only in that it's got the screams and the tremolo picking and the blast beats. There's not much else that would put it in that genre, I think.
At that point, you're basically saying you're not black metal based on aesthetics, but if you're talking completely musical characteristics, it fits the mold for sure to my ears.
Yeah,
And
I mean, I think with black metal, true black metal, the
yeah.
aesthetics are extremely important.
Hmm.
And it is absolutely not something that I want to associate myself with. Not to say there's not very good and like not terrible black metal bands, but a lot of, black metal is all about being bad. Um, uh, and I'm not about that. It's
Yeah.
not my scene.
I am a metal YouTuber. I do definitely enjoy that side of it as well, but also I really appreciate when people kind of push those boundaries as well. So yeah. Um, so something I noticed that you do in your music, which I appreciate a lot, and I know that this album, the new one, is no different, but you go for seems your approach is you put less tracks on an album, but longer run times for each of those tracks. Is there a reason why you kind of piece your records that way? Is it kind of how you
It
feel your ideas will like develop the best?
yeah, it's never really intentional. Like I start with some kernel, some seed.
Yeah.
Uh, I write parts and then I start adding parts in between. I start rewriting parts. I do months and months of rewriting and rewriting. I get these ideas that I'm like, okay, what are these ideas? How do I make them make sense? And before I know it, the songs have turned very, very long.
Yeah.
Um, I think with a lot of those songs, I could very easily split them into movements, but I don't. Uh, I come from a lot of prog rock. I think in my
Yeah.
past, I listened to a whole lot of Yes. Like back in high school, I listened to a whole lot of Yes, a whole lot of, you know, all that prog stuff.
Well,
And I don't anymore, but I think the long songs stuck with me. I'm just like, if I see a song 17 minutes long, my first thought is that's badass. That
well,
that rocks. So
well, yes,
it's
and people probably know me as like a metalhead. I'm a metal YouTuber, but I also just love stuff like Pink Floyd or maybe even like some post rock, and you kind of feel like this odyssey with like a longer track. It's like this journey. I feel like there's like somewhat of a post metal influence in your music where it kind of like
absolutely.
there's these peaks and it takes time to get there. And
Yeah, Isis was a huge influence on me
mhm.
in school. And then Sumac later on, both very important
Oh, I
bands
love
to me.
Sumac. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, post metal, I feel like I didn't really stick with it. I mean, I feel like post metal as a genre kind of crested. Not to say there's not still good post metal bands, but I feel like it's not really in the limelight in the same way as it was.
I think I would say that like a lot of bands I think the thing is like bands will incorporate post-ish ideas into other kind of established subgenres, like bringing like post metal into like a death metal project is the thing that I feel like
Definitely,
happening. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, I think, I mean, like once the sort of once people discovered, oh, like we can have metal that uses these big swells and builds and like
Mm.
uses atmosphere in a different way. That vein got kind of mined pretty quickly, and then people were like, okay, we can do this, but not, maybe not just that. There's got to
Yeah.
be maybe something else. A couple of years ago, I don't know, this is really considered post metal, but I don't know if you remember that record XI
I
by the
don't believe
band
so.
XI. It
No.
was like Greg Fox, Colin Stetson.
I love
Uh,
Colin Stetson.
yeah, it was like saxophone post black metal,
Awesome.
saxophone post metal. I mean, Greg Fox, insane drummer, Colin Stetson. It had one of the guys from Secret Chiefs 3. I mean, there's like a million guys in that band, but
Hmm.
really, really cool project. Yeah, post metal is still going, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's good stuff. Now, unless I'm mistaken, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but from kind of looking through your discography, you've never done anything with a label. You've been completely independent and self-released. What do you think that allows for you? And have you been approached by labels in the past who maybe have wanted to distribute your music?
Um, I think, yeah, people have asked if I want to distribute my music, like release it on CD, you mean, through a label? Yeah, people have
Yeah,
asked me that, and I'm always just like, I don't know. I just don't know anything about it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know anything about labels. I just put my
sure.
music up on Bandcamp and that's
Yeah,
it.
and I think
Uh,
now that's kind of people are going to find it if you do that, obviously. So,
yeah, I mean, I haven't needed a label thus far. I feel like if I feel like if I start playing live, I might try and get signed to a label
mhm.
for the next album whenever that comes out. Who knows?
Has
Um,
Victor over the Sun ever done live performances?
Not yet. Not yet. I have been trying to make it happen for many years now,
Hmm.
and I think it's finally going to happen. Hopefully at the end of the summer. I have a live date.
Awesome.
Um, we're practicing. We're getting the songs ready, and fingers crossed. End of the summer, we'll get some live Victory Over the Sun.
And you're in Portland, right?
Yeah, in
So you'll
Portland.
probably okay. Um, I've been kind of reading through your lyrics as well. They are out there. They're public on the internet. And well, first of all, and you'd probably agree with this based on kind of the conversation we've had so far, but they're definitely not your typical black metal lyrics. You pretty at all.
Oh, sorry, you just
There's
cut out there. They're not your typical what?
they're not your typical black metal lyrics at all. They're somewhat cryptic. There's kind of poetic. How do you go about writing those? Where do your lyrical ideas kind of sprout from?
Um, I don't know. I mean, again, because I don't really listen to very much black metal or
Yeah.
really get. I feel like there's a few bands where I think like, oh, these lyrics, I'm really into these lyrics. I think Bostonage, a band that I like musically and I love lyrically. I think these weird like surreal short stories, kind of more prosaic than poetic. I think those
Hmm.
are very cool. Brian Manning, right, is the main guy.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. Yellow Eyes,
It was
love those
great.
lyrics. Yellow Eyes
Yes.
is amazing, like very poetic, surreal, uh, impressionistic lyrics, and I really love that. Um, yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of poets that I really love. I would
Hmm.
not call myself an especially adept lyricist or poet. I have these concepts that are floating around in my head that I kind of try and put into words. A lot of the times it's sort of more impressionistic. I kind of have the words um the sounds of the words that I feel like convey what I'm trying to say more than like a total meaning. I sometimes wish that I could be a little bit more direct with what I'm trying to say. But I like letting people kind of construct their own meanings
Hmm.
for the for the songs. I mean, the words are also hidden behind a veil of distortion and screaming. So,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, like they're your harsh black metal vocals. I mean, your typical listener can't just like decipher that on a just
oh
cursory
yeah,
listen. You have to read into it.
yeah, that's very intentional. And I think
Yeah.
that's partially just because I'm self-conscious about my voice, self-conscious about what I have to say. Um, I mean, the reason I scream is because I can't sing. If I could sing, I would probably be trying to make pop music, or writing a musical. I don't know. But I can't. I have tried and I have a terrible singing voice. I'm totally tone deaf when it comes to singing. So I got what I got, which is, screaming until I mess up my throat real bad and do what I can.
Well, I mean, I have no musical ability. That's why I talk about it. Uh, I wanted to, this is kind of a small thing, but I was interested, small detail, but I noticed that Aki Mccalla plays violin on The Gold of Having Nothing. And I talked about the record that she was recently on from her band, A Constant Knowledge of Death. And I just have to, which I really enjoyed, and I have to just kind of ask you how that collaboration came to be.
Oh yeah. Aki's amazing. That record
Yeah.
was amazing. Constant Knowledge of Death is great. Dreamwell is great. All the projects that she does are really great. Um, Aki and I think have been online mutuals since I want to say 2018, 2019,
Okay.
something like that. She mastered Nowhere. I
Okay.
think I asked her to do that, and then I asked her to mix and master Dancing Monster, which was a great choice. The album sounds amazing.
Hmm.
It's a huge step up from what I can do myself, which is not much. I have no mixing or mastering skills. I don't know how to do that. It is an art. It is a strange, mysterious art that you have to really develop an ear for that I have not developed an ear for. Um, yeah, so she mixed and mastered the record. Um, oh, did you freeze?
Yeah. I see
Okay,
you. Yeah. Okay.
now you're unfrozen. Okay. So yeah, she mixed and mastered the record, and I had written a saxophone, trumpet, and violin part for The Goal of Having Nothing. And I was looking for a violin player, and Aki was like, I'm a violin player. And I was like, that's right. I forgot that you were a violin player. Um, it had come up in a conversation a while back. So she did the violin part, and it sounded amazing. Also, fun, interesting tidbit. Aki and I were we had met in like 2004 on a roller coaster tycoon forum. Um,
That's so good. That's so good.
yeah, way back in the day, and then like,
I played as a kid too.
oh yeah, yeah, she still plays. She's amazing. Um, but yeah, many years before we had met, we were buddies on some forum. It's
That's
very funny.
so wonderfully random, and I love that. And thanks
I
for sharing
know.
on my show. Yeah. I love how you also mentioned mastering and producing and how that's kind of its own art form. And I wish I got talked about more because like a good production job, a good mastering job could only make or break an album. But like when you see like people talk about like the hands behind an album, you're talking about who's in like the band proper, and for many reasons that's probably makes sense. But there is someone else behind kind of the board that's also making this happen that is very important to the final product.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think it's generally sort of taken for granted that someone's doing it. I think, I'm not a scholar in metal production, but just, from what I've listened to, the sort of aesthetics of it have changed so much since what, the 70s, 80s.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think back to like what the sort of like super, super clean and sterile production of like the 2000s, the late 2000s was,
Oh yeah.
and how that kind of, I always hated it, but I feel like people are, I don't know, it's evolving, and now there's a more, you can have this balance of like you can hear everything, but there's still like this richness to it. It's not overly sterile.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. A lot of what I hear now sounds very good. And I've tried to do it. It's really hard. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I did my best, but you just need to like know where everything sits. It's very hard.
I'm really impressed when an album can, like you said, like in the 2000s, like that scene had that very just very clean, polished kind of mechanical sound. I'm
Yeah,
really impressed when producers can make something still feel very natural and raw and kind of organic, but also very clear and crisp. And then sometimes those two approaches seem to fight. And sometimes if you go one way, it kind of kills this and the other way. So when people can find that balance, it's that takes a lot of talent.
it's very hard. I mean, I think like what I associate most with like that overly overproduced sounds like kind of like the deathcore thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's what I'm thinking of.
which I feel like there's been like a small like deathcore revival recently when people are like, oh, like aside from this kind of like weird production, like some of this is pretty cool. So I'm just thinking specifically of Hazing
Yeah.
Over.
Yeah, like
But I
well, I
think
mean,
there's
Lorna
other
Shore is
bands
like one of the biggest bands right now. So,
too.
oh, Lorna Shore, they're like a popular deathcore band. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I don't
Um, yeah.
I don't know much about it, unfortunately.
Um, so I wrote this question down and I'm gonna ask it to you, and I left it intentionally vague because I kind of just want you to interpret it, take it as you will. But do you feel that metal is moving in the right direction in terms of either inclusion, social progress, or just musical development? What is the state of the genre in your opinion?
Oh, I'm no authority on the subject. I don't keep up in too much of a big way aside from like sort of what I follow on Twitter from other metal people that I follow.
Mhm.
Um, but I would say absolutely, yeah, metal is definitely we're getting so many more like um, queer voices in metal, many more women in metal.
Mhm.
You know, and it's not to say like representation is an end all be all, but I
Of
think
course not.
we're starting to see like, outside of this like very narrow um sort of constraint. I think it's definitely good. I mean, in a way, I would say that art is always getting better constantly at every point because all art, at the next moment you have all the art that existed before.
Yeah.
Um, so all art is constantly getting better. Um, you know, an album, I would maybe say, yeah, an album that was released 10 years ago is better now than it was when it was released because now more people have had the time to listen to it, to appreciate it. We have had more people being influenced by it. Uh, so all art is on an upward trajectory, but I think that's a bit of a bold statement and a bit more, um, isn't exactly, I think, what you were asking. But yeah, it seems like metal is getting better, but I with the understanding that I'm not at all an authority on the state of modern metal. I feel like I can only speak to like the small subset of like experimental and avant-garde metal.
No, I mean that's great, and metal, to be frank, is not a big. Well, I mean it is, but it's not a compared to other genres. It's still very much a niche thing. So like, it doesn't take much to really have kind of an eye over what's happening. But yeah, I agree. If we're talking about like queer inclusion, I see just so many more than I think would have been there, or just feel like they could be with it, like a voice in the scene maybe 10 years ago, which is so cool to see and makes me very glad. Um, yeah, it's great that that's happening.
Yeah, I think there's I kind of got the sense that there is also a lot of people sort of looking back. Um, I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know if it's still a thing, but it seemed like there's a big like old school death metal revival.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
it's a huge movement right now.
yeah, it's still a thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have like no knowledge of old school death metal and also basically no knowledge of like the revival. I just know it's a thing. Like I listened to that Blood Incantation record once, wasn't my scene. I was like, that's cool, not for me. Um, but I think it's being done less like, oh, we need to return to how it used to be, and more like you know, we have come such a long way. Let's kind of like revisit these past. I mean, because metal has, I feel like metal, and again, I can't speak with much authority on the subject, but metal, I think, is like one of the most intensely evolving and growing
Yeah.
genres. I mean, I say that because I know more about metal than about like electronic music or hip hop
Yeah.
music, each of which like, you know, has its own growths and developments that I just don't know about. But there's, you know, sound can go in so many different ways. You can combine it with so many other genres, you know, within other like metal genres. There's this like there's this need for innovation, I think. And people have talked about how like metal is one of the only genres outside of like, you know, like academic or classical music where like virtuosity and like technical prowess is considered like a virtue sort of in and of itself. And I think that demands in some ways that demands innovation and growth. I think that's something that's very exciting about metal is that it, you know, it's not just a form, it's not just the thing itself, it's also a substance, right? Like it's a sound that's very malleable that can be used in so many different contexts that um, has so much potential for growth and being used in all these other contexts. I think it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really cool that you did mention the kind of the old school death metal revival, and it's okay if like you don't like know all the names, but it's yeah, like, it was like kind of like this reaction to maybe death metal becoming boring and not moving forward, but like this like let's look back at these esteemed classics and what about those were so compelling to so many people? Why did it influence so many bands? Why did we love them? Let's take that, but not just like try to be like a copycat. Let's take those foundations and build something very modern and contemporary out of it, which I think is very cool and has an interesting, just an interesting artistic idea behind that, which I think you alluded to. Well, I don't have any more questions, but I wanted to give it up to you to kind of plug anything. Where can people find your music? Where can people find you online? You know, give all the things. Yeah.
Well, yeah, yeah, Victor of the Sun is streaming, I think, and on all the streaming platforms that are there.
Hmm.
Um, I've got a Twitter. I'm not posting on it very much anymore. I definitely used to.
Hmm.
Um, not going to plug it because I don't want to use it anymore. I feel like I've been like wanting to retreat from social media for a second I really wanted to have this online presence, and then I feel like it very quickly kind of went very much the opposite way. I kind of miss having the urge to post. I miss having the urge to want to be like seen and be present online. But I think Twitter's just a nasty place.
It can be for sure.
Social medias can be such a bad place. So I'm really hoping that playing live will kind of scratch that itch of being, being a person, being seen, being perceived. Yeah. Victor of the Sun. That's me. That's my project. That's my
Oh
thing.
yeah. Well, Victor of the Sun, thank you again. My name is Maddie, aka Beavermosh, and I'm signing off.